Welcome back. And in this episode, we have Charles joining us to talk about the top 5 problems we see more often than any others with managers in the automotive industry. Stay tuned. We have a lot to talk about.
Welcome to Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers. Prepare to learn something new about the industry that keeps us moving.
Check out all our podcast content on our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X. Welcome back. And in this episode, we've got Charles joining us to have a little bit more of a fun episode where we're going to talk about the top 5 problems we see with managers in the automotive industry. We have a lot of serious episodes in this podcast. There are so many serious discussions to have about issues and challenges confronting the industry. But in this episode, we're going to make it a little bit more relaxed and casual. We're going to talk about some problems that we see that are common problems in the industry. And of course, they're serious, but a little bit of a lighter discussion and stuff that we can address. The more we're conscious of issues that we're dealing with management in automotive, the better we can find solutions and address them. But with that, let's go ahead and bring on Charles.
Hey, Ted, how you doing?
Good. How about yourself, sir?
Doing well, sir. Doing well.
Very good. You know, we've had some really serious topic discussions, and we were talking before we started recording about doing something just a little bit more lighter, casual, but still important. It's still a really crucial topic, near and dear to both of our hearts, and that is literally good management.
Absolutely. I think that as you look around and you see what managers are doing, oftentimes you don't see the impact it has until it's too late. So if we start looking at correcting some of these issues prior, or pointing out some of these things prior, it's going to make things flow a lot smoother.
Absolutely. So to bring our listeners and viewers up to speed, before we sat down to record this episode, both Charles and I came up with our top 5 lists. So Charles has his list of top 5 most common problems that he's seen in automotive, and I've got my top 5, and we're going to share them and compare and contrast. I'm really curious because for those of you that are new to the podcast, Charles and I, even though we worked together for quite a long time, have very, very, very different backgrounds coming into this industry. And Charles, if you want to tell everyone a little bit about your background in management.
I came from a corporate environment. I worked for Citibank for 18 years, and I was a VP with them. And I left there and went to a very small business called Meta Financial Services, and the change was dramatic. However, what you saw was the management skills it took in the big corporation. It's still the same skills that you need to use in the small business.
Some things never change.
Some things never change because it's all about dealing with people. It's all about dealing with your staff and working in the industry to make your business the best it can be.
Absolutely. And so, my background is working in the family-owned, buy here, pay here side of the used car industry. And so I don't know anything about the corporate world except what Charles has told me about it. And, we've had a lot of meeting of the minds, and I've learned a lot. And there's just a lot of great information to glean from the corporate world. And I think there's a lot of fun quirks and interesting parts of the culture of the small to medium-sized family-owned businesses.
Mm-hmm. And I think as we work through our list of expectations, you're going to see that my vision coming from the corporate world to the small world, your business being in the medium to small business industry, there's going to be a lot of things we have in common.
So which of us, you want to start down the list?
With my number 1, or should we go 5 to 1?
Let's go 5 to 1.
Okay. I think my number 5 is unrealistic expectations. We have a tendency to set expectations at a level that is not going to be reached. And then we hold ourselves and those around us accountable for not reaching those expectations where there's not a clear pathway to get there. Be it in sales, and you say we need to sell 100 cars this month. When you normally sell 50 cars this month, you're going to beat yourself up and those around you because you didn't get to 100. We can
Yeah,
do a
yeah,
much
bad
better
goal making.
Absolutely. We can do a much better job at looking historically and setting real expectations, increasing them month after month, but being really, really honest about what we think we can do. Because I think what managers do is they say, "Well, I'm a good manager, and here's what I can do," and you tend to fail that way.
I guess to kind of piggyback on that, like it's one thing to set a goal. A goal by itself doesn't necessarily mean a whole bunch. The goal has to come with process improvements and strategy and tactics that can get you there. There's a lot of setting a goal and praying for a miracle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you go back and look, you can say, if we would have looked at all the historical documents, if we looked at the processes we were working through, guess what? We would have had an achievable goal. And I mean, because if you normally sell 50 cars a month and you sell 70 or 65 cars a month, you've exceeded, you've made a major impact. However, if you say 100, that 65 means nothing.
You've turned a success into a failure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
That's my number five.
So I'll share my number five. My number five could have easily been my number one. My number five, inability to problem solve. And
Absolutely.
I see it as not only like problem solving, like, you've got all sorts of managers that can solve the immediate problem at hand for that moment in that time of day. But as far as doing that root cause analysis and looking at what is causing this problem and making the adjustments to processes or policies or training, using that right intervention, being able to diagnose the problem and use the right intervention to fix
Mhm.
the problem,
Absolutely.
very rare.
Absolutely. And I think the other part is that um, when you go to solve a problem, sometimes you have to look a little bit into the future to say, okay, here's the problem, here's the immediate fix, but how do we fix it going down the road? Because sometimes immediate fixes aren't the ones you need. You need a long-term resolution to a problem.
Yeah, and then you just end up with this like patchwork of short-term fixes, and you're stuck with that problem. You
And
see it all the time. Dealers, their entire career, have the same problem.
they're going to continue to fall apart because as soon as that short-term problem is short-term, we fixes it today, but you're going to have that same problem next week, and so you have to look a little bit long-term.
Absolutely. So, what's your number four?
How about lack of empathy? When you when you see managers who it is all about the business, it's all about the bottom line. What you're forgetting is there are people who help you get to that bottom line, and be that customers or employees. And when you don't have empathy, not sympathy, it's a whole different ballgame. When you don't have empathy, then you're going to walk into a wall of resistance every single time. When you're trying to de-escalate a call, when you're trying to de-escalate a customer in your business, if you don't have some empathy, you will never get that resolved.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, it kind of reminds me of kind of the difference between leadership and management. Anyone can be a manager. It's just a title. It's just an appointment.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of managers that are not leaders, and they take a very selfish approach to the job. It's all about them and making themselves
Exactly.
look good and making people work to make themselves look good
Or in
instead
the
of
end,
having the empathy.
absolutely, to understand what people are going through. If you have employee who's having a bad time at home, when they come to work, they're probably going to have a bad time. So you have to understand what you need to do as a manager to motivate them to take that bad time at home and kind of lift them up and say, when you're here, let this be your escape. Let's work. I understand what you're going through, but we still have a job to do, and I need you to do it. Versus, you're failing. Today is not a good day for you. You're failing. But that goes back to having empathy and understanding with people you work with, also with your customers. Also, and in this business, you need to have a lot of empathy in buy here, pay here, in dealing with customers who come in who may not be able to get the car they want, who have limited income, and you have to have a little empathy with that in order to make that successful.
Absolutely. So my number four. Um, my number four, I had a hard time exactly encapsulating it in just a few words, but for lack of a better term, lack of a big picture mindset, just a lack of a business strategy understanding of the business that they're in and the big factors going on and being able to look outside of their little window into the industry and
Mhm.
see the big picture.
Absolutely. I think what some managers fail to see is that what I do in my department affects other people's departments, affect other people's departments. And so you have to have some kind of understanding as to what the if you cut down the tree, what is going to knock down other trees.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
it may not only be about your department. And sometimes it's about this department doing this, but you have to let other people know because they're going to have to make adjustments and changes in what they do.
Absolutely.
I think my next one is taking things personally. We as managers have a tendency to say it's all about me. And when you disagree with me, when you say I think we need to try this, you're attacking me. When in all actuality, we're talking about changing a process. We're talking about you and I seeing very different things and how to get things done. A good manager is going to say, well, let's talk about it and let's work through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, taking things personal. None of that in the car business.
Oh no, not at all. There's
Never
none of
seen
that
that.
in any business, okay?
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
So my number three, I think, is actually pretty closely related. Burnout. So many managers that they are the picture of burnout.
Mhm.
Burned out managers.
Absolutely. You get overwhelmed, you get tired, and in dealerships, you can put in a lot of hours. But what you also need to do is this self-care, self-empowerment, saying, you know what, I need to take some time and breathe
Yeah.
is very important. I think that owners and I think that other people in the organization need to watch for that to be able to say, take tomorrow off. Don't
And
come in.
that's
Just go enjoy.
that. I think one of the things that to be really specific about it, lack of honesty about burnout. So it's
Absolutely.
like a badge of honor to deny that you're burnt out when absolutely everyone can tell that you're burnt out. Like we have to be honest and then do good, positive, healthy things to manage the stress and deal
Mhm.
with burnout, whether it's taking a day off, uh, the healthy things to manage with stress instead of managing it in bad ways. And unfortunately, we see a lot more of the bad than we see the good.
But when I worked for General Electric, Household Retail Services, and Citigroup, whenever you had vacation time, you were required to take 1 week altogether, and you left your laptop at home. You left everything. You did nothing. You didn't call in. Nobody would talk to you. You would simply say, "This is my week to decompress and get over the burnout."
That's amazing. I've never seen that in the car business.
Oh,
I've literally, I could safely say I've never seen that.
but I think when you talk about the size of the organization, sometimes it's very difficult. But you know, people have vacation time.
Yeah.
Require them to take the 1 week at one time, and you
Yeah.
just take it because you know what, you're going to refresh, you're going to regenerate, you're going to rejuvenate yourself.
Interesting. So what's your number two?
My number two is unwilling to change. Change comes, change is going to come. And when you're unwilling to change, you're unwilling to move forward. Without change, the organization will die.
Yeah. 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 The change management. In fact, I think that's going to be a topic of a upcoming episode
Yes,
very, very soon. Change is
absolutely.
such a challenge, and unfortunately, we've seen change have such a dramatic impact on this industry, and we can all think of so many dealers that have struggled with that, and as a result, they're no longer in business.
Absolutely. Because you look at everything that changes, and I'll save that. But if you look at all the changes that your organization goes through, that your organization has to deal with, then you will realize that if you're not prepared for change, if you're not forward looking, you're going to be in some trouble.
Absolutely. So my number two is inability to train. Um, I I could think of very, very, very few managers in this industry that had any training ability whatsoever. And it was really a challenge because if you don't have the ability as a manager to at least provide some degree of training to your people, you are missing out on one of the big managerial tools. It's like a surgeon that doesn't know how to use a scalpel.
Absolutely.
It's one of your primary tools, and you see so many managers that just they don't have that ability, and as a result they're never able to be truly legitimately effective in their job.
And it should be ongoing training.
Yeah,
Because anytime something new comes out, I think what a lot of people in this industry do is say, okay, guys, the law changed, we can't do A, B, C, and D anymore, so just stop. Rather than saying, let's talk about why we're doing this and why we're not doing this. Or in the collections piece and buy here, pay here. Here's this, we're changing this, here's what we're gonna do, and don't worry about it. You know what? They need to be trained as to what we're doing and why we're doing it to do a better job.
absolutely. So now what is your number one?
I'm calling this my Frank Sinatra narcissistic manager. We're gonna do it my way. If you don't do it my way, you're not gonna be here. If you don't do it my way, it's not going to work. I've been in this business for 30 years and I know what works. Change happens in 30 years. Things change in 30 years. And
Yeah,
what you were able to do 30 years ago, you can't do today. And there are organizations and laws that say you can't do that. However, it's my way or no way at all. You know, Frankie may have said I did it his way. He sang a song. We're talking about we're talking about a business portfolio or a business where you have to be able to relook, refocus, and rethink. And it's not just your way.
absolutely. Gosh, your number one is way better than my number one. I think I want to adopt your number one as my number one. And it ties to so many other things that we've talked about.
Absolutely.
So the lack of big picture mindset, the acceptance of change and ability to manage change, the lack of empathy ties into this uh, unhealthy. I mean, there is a degree of narcissism that can be helpful and motivating and drive people, but unfortunately, there is that pathological side where it gets to be too much, and it really, 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 really hampers so many managers.
I think all people who are successful have a bit of that Frank Sinatra narcissism that says, I'm gonna do it my way. Because you have to take risks, you have to stand up, you have to do some other things. But the real successful people also put people in their positions and allow them to do their job and make changes that or make changes or do things a little bit differently than you would do. And it goes back to your training thing. Let's sit down and talk about what's working, what's not working, and how we need to change that. So I think all of these are kind of tied in together with the manager saying, it's my way or no way. And we've all worked with those people.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can't make it as a manager, you can't make it all about you. In fact, if you're really good as a manager, you don't make it about you hardly at all. It's
No,
about your people, it's about the team, it's about the bigger picture, it's about the organization.
that-
And on some level, you can fade to the background a little bit
but
and
but if
let your
if
people
your
shine.
area is doing well, guess who's going to get the credit for it? If your area is doing well, manager, you're going to get that credit. If things are happening well in the organization, you're going to get the credit you need without having to wave a red flag. I believe that managers need to wave a flag saying, look what I've done when the time is right, and not about every small success that happens. So that's I think that's one of the biggest things I think that managers do that that are detrimental to the cause.
So my number one is not nearly as good as yours. You definitely won. Mine, my number one is lack of HR skills, and especially the ability to coach and mentor, which is different from the ability to train, but the lack of
Absolutely.
HR skills in general, and coaching and mentoring in particular. Uh, I saw, unfortunately, very few managers that had the ability to just do the HR part of the management job, and very few that could be a good coach and mentor to their people.
Like,
And that is the bread and butter of management.
absolutely. I also think that when people hear HR, they think it's about hiring and firing. But HR does a lot more than that. HR does a lot of training and developing. They do help them at training development part. And that's why I think that every dealership should have somebody in their building that knows how to train, develop, hire, fire, do those things as an HR person. To be able to talk somebody down when they want to take it personal, because then you are mentoring them, you are training them to say, this is not about you. This is about the business and what we do.
Yeah, it's such a crucial tool for managers to be able to coach and mentor and have at least enough HR knowledge themselves to identify areas of risk and concern and manage that. When something goes wrong in HR, the eyes are on the manager first and
You
foremost.
bet.
Yeah,
And because
before that,
the manager should be raising some of those issues with HR, saying, hey, here's
yeah,
what we need. Here's what I may not be able to do. Or here's how I think I messed up a little bit. If you
yeah.
if you go to that person and say, I think I messed up, here we go. I think that you're going to get that training and development that you're going to need in order to make things flow better and to increase and improve your brand.
So this was a little bit of a longer episode than we normally
Hey,
do, but I think this has been great, Charles. And I got to say, it's kind of a lead in for something that we've got coming up here that's pretty exciting. Our
absolutely.
uh, our dealership managers academy. So we're actually going to spend 2 days in the Denver Tech Center providing a high speed, really like concentrated academy style training for managers regardless of what department they work in automotive. It is customized training for automotive dealership professionals, whether they're a manager or trying to promote into a managerial role, giving some corporate style high speed training to bring people up to speed and make them truly effective managers with a full skill set that a manager should have.
And I think what it's also going to do is going to give people some time to really process and ask good questions about how does their role, how can they improve their dealership, how can they improve those things by being a manager. I'm doing more than making sure they come in late and they're not leaving early. Let's talk about the processes we have to go through to make that successful.
I'm really excited about it. It's going to be our first inaugural one. We both have big training backgrounds. We've both
Mhm.
done a lot of managerial and supervisory training, but this is the first time we've put together a this academy format training for managers across the country in automotive. It's going to be a lot of fun. Both of us, both Charles and I, are going to be teaching at it, and it's going to be a great couple days. For anyone that's interested, we have links in the show notes uh, so that you can register, sign up, and we have a coupon code. Use coupon code August for $100 off the registration fee.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, it's been another episode of Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, and be looking forward to another episode. Check out our podcast on all our social media channels. We are at Down Payment Podcast on YouTube, Down Payment Podcast on Instagram, and Down Payment Pod on X.
Thank you for listening. Down Payment, the podcast for used car dealers, is a production of Meta Financial Services Incorporated.